just make sure you keep this up so it'll like they'll let you know if it's like in a halo over your head or blocking your face.
How do I know when you're start on?
You're live. You'll start seeing numbers pop up there.
I guess I'll wait.
Yep, you wait. I'll tell you when you start. You know, you start seeing things pop up that people are on. There's. See.
Hey, how's it going, Carlos?
Alright, share it on my page. I've shared in all these groups. So you've got 8 people on. You were live. You were live, dude. I don't know who. Tim. Tim says you're live.
Hey, Tim. How's it going? All right, guys. My name is Joe Perez. Today I'm going to be tying you the pop lip. It's a Bob Popovics pattern. It's a pattern that is a lot older than most people think. Bob told me he first tied the pop lip back in the late 70s. And it didn't go public till about the late 80s or 90s. He released it in a magazine. And it's been designed to target multiple different types of predators. Basically, this lip pushes a lot of water, and it creates like a wobble action fly. Basically, I would say it's probably the old school game changer, because when you have the Hackles and the Bucktail and the distorted tips, it's going to create a lot of wiggle. Hey, CJ. So, if we take a look at the lip, you can see that this whole fly, silicone flies are pretty old. As I was discussing earlier, yeah, the first one of the first books that he released it in was in Pop Flies, but before that, it was featured in a couple magazines back in the late 80s and early 90s. And basically, the fly is tied with very minimal ties. It's actually a pretty easy pattern. I would say the hardest part is probably trying to get the silicone on smooth and getting the lip getting the shape of the lip that you want. There's very minimal ties. It's going to be tied like a deceiver, and you're basically going to do a kinky muddler head, and that's it. And you can do that by using a brush or a dub loop. So you can actually tie it multiple different ways. You can actually make it smaller and with a different lip. So here's a smaller one that I did recently. It's just a smaller profile. The lip is a little different compared to this one. The action gets a little crazier. Due to this one being so wide, it's going to actually have a little bit more head turning action to it. Same thing. The fly is very minimal ties. I would say 2 deceiver ties. What most people don't do that I like to do, I learned it actually from Johnny King, is that you do like a transition material, and I like to use Fox. And Fox and it's before you do your brush head. The Fox creates like a smooth transition. So that is one of my favorite ways to do it.
We're coming from Argentina, Delaware, North Carolina.
Again, guys,
Florida, California.
If you're just joining, I'm going to be tying Bob Popovics Pop Lip. It's designed to catch all sorts of predator fish, from largemouth bass to smallmouth to saltwater predators. Striped bass is predominantly targeted for striped bass and bluefish. And the benefits to it is that it's somewhat of a quick tie. The silicone could take a long time, though. The silicone work could take a long time. And definitely you're going to have to wait a day for it to fish and to fine tune, because you want the silicone to be completely cured up. Mm-hmm. And some of the benefits to the silicone fly is the durability. They last a lot longer than normal flies, and the silicone can actually push the material farther back and prevent a lot of the material from fouling up on your hook. So that's helpful because when you're sighting a fish, last thing you need is to look at your fly and it's all jacked up, and then you lose it, and it's no go, and you just lost probably a solid fish. So some of the materials that I like to use, the hooks that I like to use, if I can find them, there they are. I like to put it on an Arex blue water 4/0 hook. It's actually kind of blurry. And obviously Bucktail. If you get Bob's book, he can discuss the different types of. I suggest getting it because you can actually read up on how to select your bucktail. That is probably a lot more difficult than just grabbing bucktail. You have your super straight fibers right here, and you can also get your super kinky, like SF type fibers. Actually,
I think you're the first one on our lives that have said kinky.
And then the fibers up here are a little bit wavy. That's going to create more volume. But I like to get a combination of both. You can see the straight fibers and a little bit of waviness to it. That's going to create some decent volume. Try to get, I look for length in the bucktail, but there's a whole science there's a whole science, and I suggest getting Bob's book because selecting bucktail is pretty difficult. Not all bucktails are the same, and not all of it acts the same. And I find that to be probably some of the most difficult thing because you can have that makes or breaks a fly. You can have a nice fly and it won't lay down correctly just because of a bad bucktail. Could be too stiff, too much air in the fibers. Sometimes too soft, like you just overcompensate building the cone up in front, doing a hollow tie, and if it's too soft, then it just lays down completely flat. And one of the brushes that I like to use is Sculpting Flash for the head. But I also like to do a lot of dub loops. And what I use in the dub loops, I like to use a little bit of strung fuzzy fiber and ice dub. And I feel like that makes a pretty solid head. And then of course, for the lip I like to use the old school wool. Bob, when he first created this pattern, he used wool in the head, but now that there's a lot of synthetics out there, I suggest probably synthetics. They seem to be pushing a little bit more water, but for building the lip, I would highly suggest using wool or strung fuzzy fiber, because I feel like once you put the silicone onto the fiber, it actually starts to cup a little bit. See how cupped this one is? It basically does it for you once you start putting silicone on it. So, and here's a little bit less cupping. I believe this one was EP. You can use EP fibers. I was just experimenting with different materials, but so far I kind of like wool the best and strung fuzzy fiber. Both kind of act the same, but I feel like strung fuzzy fiber is a little too stiff when it comes to the lip. But wool is cheap. This little patch is $2 and it's going to last forever for at least a solid good amount of flies. And you can use it for other things. And for flash, I like to use a combination of things. Angel hair or this ice wing from Hairline. Polar flash is one of my favorite flashes out there. It's a little heavy on the bucktail, so if you use polar flash and you're doing a hollow tie, I suggest stopping before you get to the actual taper that you want and put it in the flash and then try to look for the taper that you want, because otherwise it's going to crush the bucktail a little too much. So I think because the fibers in there they're pretty tough. I've had it wrap around my hook a couple times and I've had to like just cut it off in the middle of fishing. This is some tough stuff, but I like it. It's thin and it just shines real good in the water. And the other thing I like to mix in is some of this fine lateral line flash. Hedron, I think, yeah, Hedron makes it. This stuff is pretty awesome too. And then just a couple strands of crystal flash near the head also helps as well. I like to have a variety of flash, not too much flash, but just a variety of different types. And actually, there's some other flash here that I have that's pretty good. Oh, and for the Hackles, it bends online. I actually learned this from another fly tyer and angler, Ben Wally. He's a guide out in Maine. Mets #2. These Hackles are pretty awesome. They're thin and super long, and they move like crazy. So I suggest getting some dry fly hackle, I guess is what it is. I know there's some trout guys out there that are probably like, oh no, I can't believe he's using dry fly hackle. But I've seen Bob as well use it or say something about using dry fly hackle. But if you don't follow Ben, he ties some of the best Bob Popovics style flies out there, and I learned a lot from him. So this is one big tip that he gave me, and I mean the action on these flies are crazy. And another hackle that I like to use is also Mets, the Predator #2 or #1. And there's a variety. I mean, these will last you forever. Different sizes. You can have your super long ones, long and thin ones, and you can also have some super fat ones in there. So this is pretty nice. So Mets actually makes some pretty solid hackles out there. And then most importantly, the silicone. I don't think it really matters. The silicone that I picked up is just from, I think, Walmart. It's just, and what I liked about it is that it actually said 30-minute water ready, but I don't put it in the water. I wait a day. I still would wait a day, just because, I don't know, you don't want to go through all that effort and then ruin the fly by testing it in 30 minutes. I know Ben has, though. I guess it still works. I know he said he started testing it out in 30 minutes. But I believe that's all about. Oh yeah, one of the major things to smooth out the silicone that I found is actually using a little bit of soap and water. You can use a variety of stuff. I know, I believe Gunner and Bob have used something called Photo Flow. I just didn't want to wait, and I just started experimenting with different things. You can actually use spit as well, smooth it out. But I found that using like hair conditioner or some water or soap and water, actually it gets the job done. You can get a nice shine to it. You can make it as nice as you want. I mean, the fly is going to function the same. If your fly comes out lumpy, but as long as the lip is on there correctly, it's going to move like crazy. So we can go ahead and start the fly.
You can tell them you're not ignoring comments or questions. I'm still sharing. I'll get back over there in just a second.
If you're just joining, we're going to be tying the pop lip. Alright, so what I like to tie with, I'm going to go ahead and use GSP, Hunter Denier GSP. And we're just going to get a base on here. Actually, zoom this in a little bit.
Let's see. Let me bring this.
I don't know how Braden can see in here. I need more. I need the
3
sun.
lights going on. Oh my gracious! Here's one more. 3 lights and a light up top coming down. He's young too. Don't forget.
I know. I'm losing. I got astigmatism that kills me. So I go to about I put a nice base on, and I go to about to the hook barb, and that's when I'm going to start tying in my first clump of bucktail. So when I'm selecting bucktail, I'm going to go for kind of like the upper middle. That's going to give you some decent fibers. And when selecting bucktail, less is more. A lot of people mess that up as well.
I was trying to get that down. Guess I need to bring it over.
So I grab not the tips. I grab probably 3/4 of the way up, and then you just pull out some of the shorts. You can also take a brush and just run it through. You can also avoid it altogether if you do it the way Bob does in the book, where you grab the tips that you want and just pull it all away from the bucktail itself, and basically everything is, there'll be very minimal short hairs in there. So I'm gonna go ahead and line the sucker up, and
Okay, I think I'm good. Got everything shared.
so you're gonna do 2 wraps, press down a little tension, a little bit, and then push down and 360 the fibers around. Not too hard, just enough so because you don't want to flare this too much. You want to keep it kind of low so that you can get some decent taper. All right, that's about right. Walk it forward just slightly, getting tighter and tighter as we go. Actually, this is a little too long for my liking. This is a little dull.
Everybody needs to remember to share. Every 50 shares, Norvise is going to give away one of the new Nor-vise net gaiters. Get 100 shares, we'll give 2 away.
So before you,
we'll give 3.
Sorry for that. Before you wrap all the way your butt ends, I put a little bit of super glue on there. That just helps with durability and locking that fibers really down there. And then we're going to slowly increase our tension as we move forward, covering those butt ends. Try not to ruin that taper. So I'm not even going to touch it. Usually I hold it right here and do it. I'm not going to touch it so that you can see that it's really not flaring. And you're just going to wrap over those butts. And basically, when I'm going to put in some hackles and flash, and I'm just going to try to keep all that over this bump. I don't want to continue to keep going there because it's really only 2 ties of bucktail. So you want to try to use as much space as possible on this hook. So I like to just go over it. And right there, that looks pretty good. One thing I forgot to mention is that when you're putting it down there, after you get it 360, just squeeze the butt ends a little bit and push down, add a little bit more tension, and that's going to flare the bucktail a little bit, but it's going to make the profile stand up a little taller, give yourself a bigger profile. So I'm going to use some gold polar flash. Not too much. Just a couple of fibers because this stuff is way down the fly. Plus, I think it looks better with less flash.
Somebody asked what hook you're using. Sorry, I'm reading through all the comments now that I'm back on.
I'm going to be using an Arex SA270 4-aught blue water saltwater hook. I'm going to be tying this fly for some snook.
Somebody said, how about Congo hair? I'm not really sure what.
I've never messed with Congo hair. I've heard about Congo hair.
What is it?
I'm not sure is that. I don't know too much about Congo hair. Is that a natural material? Is that found in the Congo?
Is it from what kind of animal is that one?
Is it from an animal?
Braden's got a box full of crazy animals over here, and that's not one of them.
Silverback gorilla from the Congo.
I think
that might work.
I think you might go to jail for that one. Got Central Florida on.
So when I put the flash on, I just put it kind of in front of that bump. One wrap over, and then push all the fibers. And then I'm going to walk it back to that bump. Alright, that's good. I'd like to see if I actually missing a little bit of flash on that side, so I'm going to put a little bit more. Just a small couple fibers. The glue was still setting up on there and kind of froze my fibers from moving.
Fly Tired Dungeon has Congo hair. It is a synthetic like EP fibers. Thanks, CJ.
Yeah, that might be good for the head. I don't know about the lip. Oh, I forgot to mention that when you're doing when I'm doing the flash, what I like to do is taper the tips a little bit, and then when I tie it halfway. See, what I like about the Nor-vise is that you can lock it every 90 degrees, so if I do miss a spot, I can just 90 degree it, just like how I'm doing right here. Kind of just set it.
Are you referring to the why do you have the jaws upside down? Somebody asked that.
What?
Somebody asked why you have the jaws upside down.
The jaws are not upside down.
Well, probably a second ago they were. When you were
Oh.
rotating.
I think I was just looking at it. I don't know.
So then I said, Congo hairs are way less expensive. And then Tim says they're like yak hair, but not natural. Great.
Yeah, I think that would be a good material to supplement into like a brush or like a dub loop and create a nice dense head. So I think that would be a good option.
There's some yak right here.
I've actually never used yak either. Another good one that you can use is Snow Runner. That seems to be up on the rise now. I know guys in Europe have been using that for years. Naiad, I guess it's called. I'm not even sure what the animal is. Snow Runner. It's probably, I think it's a, I don't know what it is, to be honest.
Who knows what a snow runner animal is? Let's hear it. They knew what
So I'm going to get a little bit of the skinny hackles. I'm probably going to put in, I'm not like Ben, so I don't use 24 hackles in a fly. So I use like 4.
Yeah, it's right there on the floor. Come in, Willis.
And the hackles are used to help with taper as well, and obviously enhance the movement. So when I put them in, you don't want to go too far out. You only want to go like an inch at most, I would say, or else it's going to look like weeds. So that's about right. And I just kind of just light wraps right now, just to get them in. And when I do them, sometimes I like to put them in kind of long and then pull them this way because the fibers are all going that way. And as you pull it this way, it just kind of just smooths it out. It's easier to get the length that you want, putting it in kind of long. And that helps just like this. Just kind of like grab it in. Kind of see it.
Alright, CJ said similar to sheep. Maybe he's referring to your
Snow Runner. I think it's a horse, to be honest.
Maybe he's talking
The
about
horse mane. And then I don't put the hackles in all together, all the same length. I kind of taper them up, taper them a little bit. That helps just to enhance the movement. You don't want to have too much. So they're all in there now. So now I'm going to lock it in by wrapping back to the end of the bump. And then I'm going to be snipping these out. And then I'm going to add super and wrap over it again.
Just so for you know, is that enough for everybody to see? We're good on that? Since
Yeah.
yours is covered up by words over there. That's Braden's department, the cell phone. I just work the computer.
Alright, so now I'm going to wind up my thread a little bit and then really crank down so you don't want those hackles coming out. It's kind of a big bump, but it's fine. That bump is needed. So what I like to do, I kind of like to put the brush head. You have to try to remember when you're building the fly that the brush needs to be close to almost halfway, or else it's gonna look. You don't want, because if you start getting too close to the eye and you start putting your brush on, it's gonna. I don't think it's not gonna get enough. You're not gonna build up enough head on the fly, and then plus you gotta put your lip. So I probably put like the thickness of the hook. I stop probably about from the eye at the thickness of the hook, but then try to build the head up, starting close to halfway. So, and at the end of this bump is when I kind of like when I know to start my second bunch of bucktail, and that is same thing.
So Congo hair is $1.69 a package versus $7.99 for EP fibers. In case you ever want to give it a shot. Sounds like a deal.
That's a good deal.
Sounds like Braden Miller might want to start checking into that himself.
So okay, prepping the bucktail fibers. Again, look for the ends of the bucktail, and what you want to do is start to build a little bit of taper. So you want to go a little shorter this time. It's a little long. Just slightly shorter. I go like a 1/4 inch, and that's about right because you're gonna have the taper from the hackles as well. All right, that's good. I'm gonna put it in 360 the fibers. Before we actually lock them in, we're going to squeeze the butt ends a little bit. Just little 2 wraps, press it around, organize it around the hook. When you like it, pinch right here and squeeze down. And that's going to elevate the profile a little bit. And do your locking wraps. See how that is now a little taller when you roll it on. Just try to organize it. And the profile is a little bigger now. That's what you want. And that's created by just pinching the butt ends and then pulling down and then just start wrapping over the butts in a little bit. You can take off a little bit of the butts. I take off a little bit of the butt ends, and then we'll do the same thing as we did last time. Super glue it, wrap over it, help boost up durability.
We're at 41 shares. 9 more shares, we'll give away 1 net gator. Get to 100, we'll give away 2. Oh, here you go. Snow runner hair is from a domestic farm animal and is very similar to fuzzy fiber. CJ Morgan is on it tonight.
I know a lot of the people spay fishing, I think, use it. Starting to make its way to the streamer world. It's the same thing, throw a little bit of polar flash. Just a little bit. And now that we're at a tapered section, I like to take at least 2 inches off the polar flash from the original length and then retaper the fibers so that they're not all the same, and it's going to just blend a little better inside the bucktail. Just set it on there halfway and kind of just distribute the fibers a little bit. And I kind of keep it on top for this one. Just get it around there.
Jason Williams says hi from
Perfect.
Wales.
Hey, Jason. You're up late. So, the fly that I'm going to be doing is going to have a white and tan. And with white and tan, I actually like to add a little bit of red flash. I have some holographic red flash. It's from Kreinik. It's a company out of West Virginia. It's a small, like, sewing company. They actually were discovered, I don't know if Chuck Kraft discovered them or what, but that's the material that was used for his original Krelix fly. And it's actually, I think, the best flash to use for the Krelix fly. And I don't know if everybody, I don't know what other people around the country use for the Krelix fly, but Kreinik is the name of the company, and they make some amazing flash. Some of the best flash that you'll see. I just take a little bit, like, again, 2 inches off. Just 2 strands. And you're just going to add this to the mix.
Jason Williams said he's up because he's been fishing. I guess that's a good reason.
Yes.
And someone wants to know, what species are you targeting with this fly?
I'm going to be targeting...
Tell everybody again what fly you're tying and all that too while you're at that, for anybody new.
So I'm going to be tying the poplet. Basically this color scheme. Just adding a little bit of red for a flash to the mix in this one. And this fly, basically used for all sorts of predators, from largemouth bass to smallmouth. This might be a little bit big for smallmouth, but you never know. Maybe Michigan smallmouth eat this. Ohio smallmouth for sure eat this. But I'm going to be throwing it in Florida. I'm going to try to target some snook with it. You can also throw it at some bull reds. I know they'll eat it. Basically, you just get the fly in front of them.
You can leave one here for Braden for when he goes to Harker's, and he'll give that a shot if you'd like.
Sure.
He tied one, a couple actually. He was messing with the lip too much, and then he messed it up.
I've done that too, Braden. If you're on, everyone makes that mistake where you just over trim and over trim and over trim. So I added some red flash into the mix. We have our 2 layers of bucktail. We're going to start to focus on making, or actually I forgot, we got to add the grizzly hackle. I like to add a little bit of the grizzly hackle in there because I just think it just looks good. Has a nice little accent to it. So what I'm looking for in this hackle is not the super long skinny ones, because I like to use that for the bigger flies. Kind of like a skinnier hackle for sure, but not like a super long one. I know they're in here. You just gotta take time. I like. So here we go.
Someone said snook will crush it. Are they good for stripers? Yep, they are.
Oh, for sure. Bob Popovics designed this fly back in the 70s and solely tied it for bluefish and striped bass. Probably everything else too. He traveled. I think he did a good amount of traveling as well.
Finn says hello from Norway.
Hey, what's up, Finn? Alright, so these are going to be my hackles. Bear with me, this is kind of a process to get the hackle. This one's a little different. Alright, this is better. So again, I'm going to try to measure my hackles. This one's all chewed up. I don't like to use the chewed up ones. I'm sure it'd work just as fine, but it's going to, I don't know, mess with me. It's probably the most difficult part, is probably trying to find your hackles. it's probably a good time to answer a question. Was there any questions?
Back over here.
Perfect, that one.
What weight rod would you use with this fly?
I knew that was gonna come because
As
I always.
every week.
I would suggest for this size, 8 or 9 weight. I'd say would bump it out. And when you get to around this size, I'd say I don't think you want to go anything less than a 7 weight. I like to use a 7 weight a lot. And so I would, for like this size right here, I would say 7 or 8 weight. A lot of that has to do with the line I think you use. If you use an aggressive head, that's going to be your the biggest factor is having like the real outbound short or like a scientific angler. I like to use a scientific angler sonar or a Titan fly line, and that has more of an aggressive head to it, and it's really going to bump out those bigger flies. So I don't go all the way to the end with these grizzly. I go just to the end of the bucktail, and I'm just going to put it in over this bump.
Speaking of your grizzly, someone wants to know what kind of hackle that is.
This is the hackle is Met's Predator hackle. I think it's size number 2. I suggest getting it because there's a variety of hackles on this. Like you have your short and fat ones, you have super long ones that are skinny, super long ones that are kind of fat, and that covers you for a lot of different types of fly patterns. And there's actually some small ones in there too for some really short ones.
Somebody wants to know, can they look forward to a live fishing video with one of these flies from you?
I actually have one posted on my Instagram. It might still be in my story if you follow me at JSP Fit to Fly, or you might have to
Look it up.
look it up and put it in there. And it should be in my story still, and it gives you like a general idea of what the kind of action. But it basically, it's going to wiggle aggressively and have some pretty nice head shakes. That's going to create these hackles to really wiggle like a swimming fish. It's pretty awesome. So I like to get the hackles on that bump. You don't want to put too much thread pressure on it. I feel like it's going to roll the fibers a little bit. So actually, I'll angle it this way. So I kind of just put them on there with a little bit with as light thread pressure as possible, get them to where I like it. And then cut these off. But go to the end of the bump so that you actually have hackle to wrap over. Thought I messed it up there for a second. That would have sucked.
Now, I know you'll throw these for saltwater stripers. Someone asked about landlocked stripers.
For sure. I've never fished for landlocked stripers. I feel like they're pretty deep. You would probably know best. What I also like to do is kind of, I don't know if I can turn this around. I could probably take it out of the vise real quick. With these hackles,
Heavy.
I like to tent them a little bit. They don't go straight like to the side. They go a little bit on top and kind of tent them. I learned that from tying a bunch of kinky muddlers, a pattern by Johnny King, and that actually helps trap some water. And that water being trapped is actually going to kick the hackles up a little bit more. Just make them move a lot more. Oh, and of course, just add your super glue over the butt ends. And then wrap over, trying to clean that up as much as possible. And I like to just hold everything in place wrap. That's it.
Do you have any videos on YouTube? They
I-
don't Instagram.
I don't. I was thinking about doing some, but
This one will be on Instagram by Wednesday at the latest with a material list of everything Joe's using tonight.
so now we're gonna start to build the head. And what I like to do for the head is get a collar for this bump right here. Like you can see, if you can see this bump, I like to use Fox for basically this entire bump. Stop right here, tie in a brush or do another dub loop, and then build the head up to about the thickness of the hook, to about right there. And that should give you, the Fox is going to give you a nice transition into this sculpting fiber brush. And when you start trimming it up, it's actually gonna bleed out, so you don't have a hard line. One of the things that I see people do mostly is when they just throw on a head and there's no transition material, so it's a pretty aggressive actually I'm gonna start this. It's a pretty aggressive taper. So dub loop.
Use this thing too.
Yeah, I'll use that one actually. I don't think I've ever used that before. Just wrap over it. And we're going to lock it in just in front of the hackles. Wrap it back, finish it right there. Take a little bit of wax.
That is the stickiest stuff ever.
I don't think this is the super sticky stuff. I know there's some runny stuff.
I bought one for Brandon at a show because he ran out, and you could take that thing and take it between your fingers. It was so sticky.
Yeah, this is a pretty different. Alright. And here we go. We're just going to get a small pinch of Fox. That's going to transition the materials. It's not too much. That's about how much I use. You just only want it for a couple wraps. That's only like 2 wraps at the most. Get it in there. I kind of wanted to go back kind of far to really start to bleed. So bleed into the bucktail. It's light enough that it's not going to crush it. So get it in there to how you like it. Get it kind of even. Maybe straighten this out a little bit. And for this one, I guess you do it like this. This is a different dub loop tool. This is Braden's. And good. Do it again. This is why I like to use GSP 100 denier, because I feel like you're not going to break the thread, and it's going to shrink. It's going to make it's going to be pretty tiny. It's a small denier, so it's not going to get a lot of bulk.
All right, you have a new tire watching. Would like you to rate the difficulty of this fly on a scale of 1 to 10.
Tying wise, I'd say it's about a 4. Tying just this portion. The silicone, you'd probably add to like
15.
Well, the silicone doesn't have to be pretty as long as you get it in there. I would say it's probably about an 8 when you're trying to get the silicone on there, because that could be a pain to really get right. And I'm just gonna lock that right there, and kind of just put this off to the side because I'm just going to rotate the vise. start. I'm gonna do one wrap, get it to where I want it. Get it in there. Just touching wraps, that's good. Alright, that should be fine. Tie that off. And then get rid of the loop. And then we're gonna walk it back. And that's going to bleed into our dub. It actually has a little bit of volume to it. It's gonna bleed. And here I like to add just a little bit of either crystal flash or lateral line. I'm gonna throw a little bit of lateral line. Not too much. I'll just grab 3 strands. This stuff is pretty awesome. I take about 2 inches off as well from the total length, and then taper them, and then throw it over, and kind of just do a little bit to the sides. That should be fine. Sorry, I like to look at my fly kind of like straight on sometimes, just to try to get a good idea. Flashes in there right. We added some lateral line. Next, we're going to put in our brush. This is a 2-inch brush. It's definitely going to be trimmed. Yeah. So take a little bit off the brush, get a nice clean start. And when I tie it in, I'm not going to tie it butt up against the fox. It's just going to be slightly, like a 1/16 of an inch in front of it.
Alright.
And just go up. Just right there. And when I go, I'm going to snip off the tag end.
Any reason, let's see,
Any reason for...
it says, any reason you're not using the auto bobbin?
Oh, it'd actually be a lot easier if I used auto bobbin right now.
There's 2 right there, hang
I
on.
don't- I couldn't tell what thread were on it, and I was a little nervous I was going to break
I
it.
can tell you it's going to be either the Vivus.
What's good about the auto bobbin is that you don't have, when you're doing the dub loops, it's... I still need to order one, Tim. I really do need one because it's getting...
Plus, a lot of people might
I
not
do a lot
know,
of dub
this
loops.
is not your house. This, you had to pack up to come here tonight.
So before I put it on there, I like to just orient the fibers to go back. And basically we're going to stop. I put my thread where I want to stop, and that's about right here. So just get yourself some nice touching wraps. This is going to build yourself a nice head. And every 2 to 3 wraps, just stop and kind of like brush it out. I like to use a dog brush. I feel like that helps the best. And if you really need to dig deep, this other type of like dog brush is like a flea brush, I think. But for the most part, this stuff really helps. See this, the tying part is the quick part. You can burn through this pretty fast. It's adding the silicone and getting it on there, which could be pretty difficult. It's not too difficult. It just depends on how fancy you want to get with it. Just nice touching wraps. Getting close. Alright, this is where I kind of want to stop, give myself some adequate room. Just 2 wraps. 2 wraps on it, and then 2 wraps in front of it. 2 or 3 wraps. Snip it.
What did you say you're wrapping right now?
This is a sculpting fiber brush.
So sorry. I've turned everything off on my cell phone except FaceTime, and I'm getting FaceTime. You would have cut out for a second.
Perfect. You gotta watch out for this edge. Sometimes there's like that tag in will cut your thread. You get all the way this far and you get sliced, you get your thread sliced, and then everything unravels. That would suck. Now we can get yourself a nice base. Hold on, almost got that. Almost broke my thread there for a second. Right. Nice smooth base. And what I like to do here is probably just throw a couple half hitches, and I'm going to cut the thread off because I don't like having the thread on while I trim. It just needs a little bit of trimming. Not too much. The brush kind of made it easy.
What size brush did you use?
I used a 2-inch brush. Just add a little bit of super, a couple more half inches before I cut it off.
Alright, so we're at 57 shares, so we'll be giving away 1 neck gaiter tonight. If you get up to 100, then we'll give away another one.
You can definitely fish this right now. Be alright. So I kind of just take it out of the vise a little bit. And trimming, that could be pretty difficult. That's just something that I think everyone's just going to have to get familiar with. What I like to do is kind of pinch it a little bit and kind of just do a top cut. Just like that, just take the top off, and then the bottom is obviously harder with the hook point. Kind of pinch it together, kind of get it up and angled. I just do the top and bottom for right now, get it to where I like it, and then I'll start to focus on rotating the vise and doing kind of like a 360.
Somebody wants to know, could you resize this fly for targeting browns?
Brown will hit this size right here. At least that's what Blaine Chocolate told me. He was throwing like 9-inch flies at brown trout.
Blaine. That's not the normal.
You probably get one every couple months, but it'd be a huge one.
That's not the normal fly.
Definitely, you can definitely downsize it. You can put it at probably a solid 5 inches. You can basically go any size you want. It's probably a little bit easier, I think, with the silicone. You don't have to use as much. So now I'm just going to, I just release some of the tension off the vise so that I can turn it a little easier. And I'm just gonna just slowly just start rotating the vise, getting that 360 head. The trimming doesn't need to be extensive because you're putting silicone over it. Just enough to make sure it flows.
Well, here's a question we were talking about before you started. Someone wanted to know if you make your own dubbing brushes using the Norvise brush table. Joe is fairly new to the Norvise. How long have you been tying on your Norvise?
Not long, a couple months. There's what I like about the Norvise is there's multiple jaws. Here's some of the jaws right here. So if you want to tie game changers, their micro jaws are awesome for shanks. It holds shanks and up to, I think, 2/0 hooks.
Which Joe ties a lot of.
And the standard jaws. So there's I didn't get the standard jaws. I opted out for it and got the Magnum jaws because these micro jaws, for small they are, they hold hooks. They can hold some big hooks. I think I've put a 2 or 3/0 in these, and they've definitely held pretty good. Because I do a lot of game changers, so these hooks are actually a game changer in tying them. Because you can actually just barely hold on to the shanks, and it hold pretty solid.
Why don't you grab the dubbing brush table right there so
And then
nobody's seen it before.
And you definitely need to get the Nor-vise. And then one of the other options I liked is this table. 'Cause I do a lot of dubbing brushes and dub loops. So you can basically turn your Nor-vise into a brush table. So you can actually, you have to get the bobbin as well because it's automatic. So it's definitely going to help. And you can just build up your head right here and make it easy. And you can add so many ingredients in this. I mean, the world is limitless on how well on all your designs could be on making a dub loop. You don't have to mess with clips. I have to use a lot of clips when I'm doing like I'm adding flash or just doing complex dubbing loops. But since everything's built on this table, it's gonna make it a lot easier. You just go spin it up, and you can go from spinning up to wrapping it on right away. And you're good to go. And so that makes it easy. I think dub loops are essential, and I use it pretty much in every tie. A lot of these ties, from shrimp flies to sand fleas to building different heads, game changer heads, brush heads, even I do entire game changers with dub loops. If I don't have the brush, I'll just do a dub loop on each shank. Sometimes I even have to put in probably 2 dub loops on one shank. So I do a lot of dub loops, and I think having the table definitely will helps a lot of being just customizing all sorts of, adding so many different colors and materials. It's just limitless on what you can do. So that's what I liked about the Nor-vise. That and just the micro jaws holding the shanks. You can be barely touching these shanks, and you still has a solid holding power to do whatever you want to do with it. So now that that's in there, we need to add our thread. I actually like to use a smaller denier thread on this part. This is just going to be a Vivis 50-aught. Actually, I don't have that. We'll just stick with 100 GSP, 100 denier GSP. Just wrap it on there. So just enough room to get the wool on. So I'm going to be using this wool. This is the part where this is tricky because it's hard to explain how much material to use. You don't want to use too much material on the lip, but you also don't want to use too little, because when you start putting it on, the silicone's going to start sticking the fibers together, and it's going to you're going to have to wait till it's cured up if it's all messed up, and then you can start filling in the holes with silicone. So I definitely had to have it. Actually happened with this one right here, this fly. I didn't put enough material on, so definitely had to do a couple of silicone, at least 3 to 4 silicone. So to get the wool on there, it's kind of like working with dubbing. You kind of just want to put it on there, stick it in the center, and kind of just get it around the eye as 360 as possible. Do a 1 wrap, 2 wraps, and then just squeeze down, get it on there, and then you can slowly orient the fibers to focus more on the bottom. You don't want it over the top, since the whole idea of it is just to have the fibers towards the bottom. So that looks about right there. So we're gonna lock it in right there with another couple wraps. And then we can go ahead and start trimming some of this other material out.
Look who just popped on. Hello, Mr. Popovics. He says, I like what I'm seeing. Hello, Joe.
Hey, Bob. How's it going? Just adding the lip right here.
Bob, I made a wine cake 2 weeks ago. Thought about you.
Is that I got the recipe, Bob.
You did not. Don't even. They tried to get that recipe at Braden's middle school since I don't have any kids there right now. I still didn't give it up.
I'll DM it to you. All
You're gonna
right.
get me in trouble.
So that's a good amount. That's a solid amount of material right there. Just enough to really get enough structure to build that lip. I'm gonna actually tighten it up just a little bit. Looks a little loose. So now we're gonna transfer the fibers forward. So I just kind of just keep it in front. Raise your thread up and push the fibers back and transfer it forward. And since I want like more of a 90-degree lip, I'm just gonna build a little thread dam. Use the eye of the hook to build that thread dam a little bit.
He said he's at his bar, can't hear very well, but you are tying awesome.
Appreciate it, Bob. Thanks for creating this pattern. All right, that looks about right. So I'm gonna go ahead, put a clip on here.
Oh, here. Would you need one of my hair clips? What size would you like? Braden steals all of them.
This is a good size right here. I put a little clip right here so I don't get super glue on it. Actually, I probably don't. I would do a little bit of super glue. It's gonna get silicone anyway, so you don't need to do too much. Just a little bit on thread. And we're gonna tie this off. And that's when the fun starts. So 2 or 3 wraps. Get yourself a nice whip finish. Just break that off. Should be fine. And then we're gonna get just the bobbin and kind of get the fibers all good to go. Actually, it's probably easier with this comb. Just get it nice and straight. So you should have something that looks like this. So now what we're going to do is we're going to trim the lip, the fibers to get a smaller lip, because you don't want to use this much silicone. It'd be too hard. It's going to curve like crazy. So one of the things about the lip you got to remember is that you don't want it to extend past the barb of the hook point. Otherwise, you could potentially impede some of these hookups. So, but you also want to keep the lip oversized so that when you're test swimming it and you're fine tuning it, that you have enough lip material to trim away, trim the sides, to trim the bottom to get it to swim correctly. Or if you need to trim the bottom of the lip. So what I like to do is just kind of go, kind of get an idea where it's at, and kind of just snip this stuff out of the way. And there we go from having a huge mess to something like this. It's something that we kind of want right there. And then we can even take it further and actually get the sides as well. Actually, it's probably best to do this out of the vise. You don't want to go too much to the side. Like I said, you want to go oversized a little bit. That should be something that you should be getting right there. And now I'm gonna take a little bit of this top stuff off right here, this little fuzz. So now the fun starts. This is where it can get tough and messy.
What you need?
Probably a paper towel. Actually, I forgot a paper towel. You should probably have a paper towel with you just to wipe your fingers off.
Yeah, Braden doesn't keep it in here.
So here's the silicone that I use again. This is roughly the shape that I'm looking for. So the hard part about this silicone is that getting it smooth on there, it's really not necessary. You can have it as lumpy as possible, but I think the most important thing is just getting this lip like nice and curved and proportioned to the fly, so that just equal water dispersion. Hey, but I don't use photo flow. I should. I probably should order some. I actually use like soap and water. And that smooths it out pretty well with just soap and water, or like some type of like hair conditioner. You can definitely get some non-scented hair conditioner. Probably maybe put a little bit of scent in that conditioner, lock it in. But definitely photo flow is a good option. Soap and water, or just spit, jet dry. Oh wow, I'm gonna try jet dry. That's easy to get. I don't know where you get photo flow from besides Amazon.
Jet dry, like
is that
dishwasher jet dry?
Jet dry, is that I think it's dishwasher.
I'm pretty sure.
So I like to so one of the first things that I like to do is probably the lip first. So to get the lip.
Saliva.
Yeah, saliva. Hold on. That's the bad thing about silicone is that.
Oh, hi Brad Buzzy. He's watching tonight.
Hey, what's up, Brad? Long time. Use this piece of plastic. All right. So I like to use my fingers for the lip. Just get a good chunk. Kind of squeeze it in between the tips, and then you're just gonna really apply it to the lip. Get it on there. What's good about this stuff is that you actually have time. It's not like it takes 30 minutes for it to start to cure up on you, so you can definitely have a ton of time. So I just get it on there and let it cure up a little bit because it's easier to shape when it starts to get cured up. Actually add a little more. What I like about wool is that it's not that coarse, but it's not too flimsy. Kind of like, well, EP is good, but EP, it gets kind of hard to work with if it gets saturated with silicone. So one of the things that I like about wool is that it's a good in-between material. It's not as coarse as Strung fuzzy fiber, but it's not as limp as EP or laser dub. You just want to get all these little fibers in there saturated. We'll just let that set up for a second.
Bob says text him your info and he'll send you photo flow.
Oh, that'll be awesome. I'm sure. What is it, anyways, Bob? Oh, I take a comb and kind of straighten out the fibers a little bit as well. If you're wondering why I'm using a comb, I just take a random comb and kind of just get it, because sometimes it can get a little sticky. And
you use a real comb, unlike Brady.
So, see this part that's hanging off a little bit? I'm just gonna get rid of that right now. Wow, my comb just fell into the trash bin and had silicone fingers. Alright. So I'm gonna just get rid of that with, you don't want to use your good scissors, you kind of just want to use with whatever you have. Get it in there. So just let that set up while you start building the head up. Actually, I got the dub and brush material a little bit right here, so you can be as aggressive as you want with this material. It's not going to go anywhere. You still have plenty of time before it starts to cure up on you. So just get in it. Really push up on it. There was some material right there that I needed to saturate, so let me get that.
I've used E6000 glue for mine instead of silicone. A little more rigid, but still a little pliable.
Yeah, that sets up pretty fast too, doesn't it?
I think Breeden has that.
Yeah, it doesn't need to be pretty right now. We'll get it going soon. But now that we have that separated from the material, it can be a lot easier to work with now. So just get a little bit more on there. And as it starts to cure up, you can start to cup it and get it to where you want it. And then you can start trimming it a little bit to get it even.
Alright, so Tim says photo flow is what they use to develop film pictures with. Kind of went away with digital photography. Bob says you need photo flow in all caps. It'll change everything for you. He says, I'll watch all this later. Send him your contact info. He'll set you up.
Is it cancerous?
He says, thanks for taking an interest in silicone flies. I have to eat my wine cake now. Oh, you're hilarious. If you got those girls of yours to figure out that wine cake recipe, you need to send me one to try.
To do the head, I actually like to use the bobkin a little bit. And just get it on there. And this is the working process right here. Just get it on, get it kind of ugly on there, and we'll smooth it out. Just get it around the fly, because it's definitely a process to get it to look good. Just get it. I don't go all the way back yet. I'll just go halfway, because I don't want to get all this stuff. I'm going a little too far now. That's smooth out. Just lock it in. It just needs to be a light coat. You got to do multiple coats. And one of the major parts of this fly is actually getting the base of this lip to get nice and thick. What you want is something, see how thick it is underneath the lip? That's what you want to try to build up. But it's a building process, so you don't do it all at once. But you don't have to let it cure up overnight. Sometimes I do. I might just get to like this point and just leave it overnight and then finish it up tomorrow. But I just get enough material, enough silicone or 360 around it, then I'll start to smooth it out a little bit. I'll add more silicone, smooth it out, add more silicone, and smooth it out. And then when you start smoothing it out, it should start to look a little better. So, I like to just tap it. Kind of just light taps. That gets it punched in and smoothed out.
Alright, is the purpose of the lip just to push water or what?
It's to create a pretty realistic action. It's going to grab the water and it's going to make the whole fly swim like a pretty realistic game bait fish. It's kind of like a crankbait, conventional fishing. It's gonna look like a lure. Now that this is curing up a little bit, just get your fingers wet a little bit, and then you can start to smooth out the lip a little bit better. Get it to like what you want. It's gonna need more silicone, that's for sure. So the head is getting pretty smooth now. It definitely needs a lot more silicone on the bottom. I would suggest working slow. The slower you go, the easier this gets, but the longer the fly takes. But since it's a fly that's going to last a long time, I suggest just taking your time. Like, there's no need to rush it. There's no need to make it super pretty either. Because imagine taking all that time, then you break it off. It kind of suck. But the more you do, the better they start to come out. So I just like, when I'm going around, I just stab the silicone and just push it around slowly, and then I'll take my finger and then smooth all that out. But you just kind of just get it on there. And I found that the hardest part to really work is underneath the fly, where the hook point is. That's always a pretty tough spot to work. And really, it's just, you're just gonna have to get in there with your finger. You can also put a little bit of soapy water on your comb. I like to do that. See how small this is? I like to put it in there and smooth it out with that as well. But on bigger flies, it's definitely easier. It's definitely, there's a lot more room. Just smash it. And smashing it definitely makes it, smashing it and then kind of pushing it as well kind of spreads it out a little. You can dry your finger out a little bit, try to taper it in. That's one of the other difficult parts is trying to get rid of the hard line that the silicone makes. It's really, it doesn't really matter. Definitely looks better if it's not super hard into the fiber, so you just gotta kind of like smooth it out and taper it out as best as possible. and then that line will kind of just vanish. And all this entire time, like the lip is kind of curing up a little bit, and it's going to be a little easier to work with. All right. So I'm going to take a little bit. I'm going to take this comb a little bit and kind of get it right underneath there. And just kind of get it a little past the hook bar, because this is what's going to help you help stop some of the fouls that you could get with the bucktail fly. So that's good. It's a little rough right there, but we're going to let that cure up a little bit, and then we're going to add some more and try to get that pretty solid. And we're going to let it cure up, and then we're going to add some of our eyes. And the comb helps me spread out the silicone, because if you when you get it wet and you start pushing it in, it could get bunched up still on top of each other. And having something that can really dig into it, not too much, just a light touch, it can smooth it out a little bit, and then let it cure up. And then you can reapply some more after it starts to cure up a little bit. But definitely something like this helps me get in to this spot right here, and also kind of push up all into the eye, right in here. I could definitely. So I'm gonna get a little bit more silicone on the lip, and this is going to just beef it up just a little bit. Just cake it on. Don't worry about if you have gaps, because you can always add silicone and you can fill those in. That I had a fly that had huge gaps because I didn't add enough material, but just enough material to build a lip, and I was able to save it. And it was this one. So you can't even really tell. It looks like there's all material, but I was able to save it. So again, let that cure up a little bit. Just wet your fingers actually a little bit, and we're just gonna kind of spread that in there. All right, now we're gonna build up behind the lip, right in here. So that needs to be kind of like not super level, but we want to add actually a nice little base right there, so that when you're stripping it, it's not gonna fold back or just collapse. So just dab it in. And while you're there, you can build up the back of the fly a little bit with a little layer of silicone. So just dab this in. Get that nice and in there. Same thing, just keep stabbing the material. If you keep stabbing at it, it actually moves it around and kind of smooths it out, gets it to where you want it to get. And then we'll push it in, and then add another layer on top of it. So now that looks pretty good right there. Just lightly wet your finger and kind of just touch it, just stab.
Mike Hawkins would like to know, how does it cast? Does it propel much and twist up your leader?
No, it casts pretty well. There's really not much material on it. It's just all bucktail. It's pretty light. You definitely feel the weight of the silicone in the head. It does catch the wind a little bit. I'm not casting these super far. I think farthest is probably 60 feet. But it depends on the line that you're using. If you're using I use an aggressive taper in the head, so that I'm like an outbound short, and so that line definitely launches these bigger flies. It's no different than trying to throw like a game changer. I feel like it might be, depending on the game changer, it might be less. It might be a little lighter, just because there's less materials. It's just too. You're just casting basically the silicone head. All this other material is so lightweight that it's irrelevant. So I like to smooth out this base a little bit, and you'll start to see it smooth out. I just use like the side of my finger or the comb to get it going, get it to the angle that I want. That looks about right. We're going to try to cut this a little bit, let it try to cure up. And as it cures up, it's going to be easier to work with. Now we can go back and do a little bit more of the head. Actually, this would probably be a good time to stick on some eyes. Let me get, where's my...
You open up Braden's drawer right there next to you.
How about some eyes? I'm going to try to use some living eyes. Usually I use sticker eyes. I've done this once, and it seems to be coming out okay. So now that's a little tacky, you really don't need to add any glue because we're going to silicone over it. So again, I like the vise because it locks at 90 degrees and you can get kind of somewhat even eyes. And I'm just going to drop this eye right there. So let that tack up. So these are living eyes. And eyes are definitely can be tough to put on. All right, that looks good. I'm just gonna push it in there. It's gonna tack up a little bit. So now I'm gonna put a little bit of silicone over the eyes. Just not trying to stab at the eye because you don't want to move them. Just get in front of it and kind of work it over, and just cake over them. And then we're gonna try to smooth out the silicone and then put like a shine to the silicone, because you don't want the eyes completely blocked out with lumpy silicone, because then you're not going to be able to see them. With this, you should be able to still see them. So just cake on a good amount. Try not to stab it too much. Just get it around the eye. Everything's just done in layers. So that's somewhat, looks like crap right now, but we're gonna press it in and it's gonna smooth out pretty good. So get it on the head. And as we're working this front part of the head, we'll just start working to the other eye.
You ever tried this fly on a one-ot?
Actually, this one might be a one-ot. Right here. I brought the hook here. I put it on yeah, this is the hook that I use. It's a one-ot streamer hook by Arex. It's a one-ot, but it's actually, I think, like, it's pushing like close to like a 3 or 2, just because of the hook gap. So it's a little bigger, it's a little longer, so that it pushes the hook point a little farther back from the head. This is gonna have a smaller lip because of the shorter shank hook. So when we're testing it, a lot of this lip is gonna disappear, and it's just gonna be enough to get that action, so that it doesn't ruin your impede your hookups. And all that has to be done before you fish. You don't want. I mean, I guess you can do it before, and you can always trim during if you miss a fish and you have an idea that it was due to the lip. Then you can always just trim it out in the water, and it should still be fine. One other thing when you're testing it, to get it to swim, you might need to add some lead to the hook bend to keel it a little better. Now we're almost done with this first section right here. Just caking it evenly around the eyes. You can just do the eyes and just glue them on, but I want to make sure that it's even, or else it could throw the weight off of the fly, I feel like, and then you have to add more lead to really land and track straight. So try to keep it as even as possible. It just looks all mashed up right now just because you're just stabbing it. Now we're going to try to smooth all that out.
Oh, I was scrolling through the comments. Bob said he needs to get you some sheep fleece to work with too.
Yeah, they don't sell that by me. They sell wool. Yeah, the original was the fleece and wool, right, Bob? So
He's gone back to the bar now. That was earlier. I missed that comment.
So we're smoothing it out now, just stabbing it, poking at it, and sliding your finger. Try to smooth all that out to get that eye to show in. Sometimes you gotta push on it, just to really push on it. To really, because when you're caking over the eyes and you press on it, it could stay stuck in that one spot. Now it'll work a little bit. It's a little bunched up right there, so I'm just going to take this comb and kind of just push it a little bit to get rid of that hard line. And then I'm going to take my finger again and kind of push on it, and that should just smooth all that out a bit. Also get the comb wet. And then you can get really underneath it. It doesn't have to be super pretty underneath there. Just get it so that the material stays stuck right there, so you don't. So it's just foul proof. That's one of the benefits to this fly and fishing silicone. It's just, it helps it. I'm not gonna fail. Same thing. I was just taking the comb and spreading out the silicone a little bit better. Now I'm just going to shine it up a little bit. It's a little caked on right here. Just dry your finger and kind of spread it out. Alright, now let's just check the lip. I'm actually going to cut a little bit of this lip off. It's a little long right now. See how long it is compared to this hook point? You see, it's going to have to remove a lot of that stuff. So, I'm just going to take it out of the vise. And kind of just straighten out that cut just a little bit.
So might say good thing you've got a nice rotary vise there.
Yeah, definitely want a rotary vise to work around slowly but surely, like getting all around. This is going to help add more, when we add more layers to this, to the lip, having a shorter lip, kind of close to what you want to get the final cut, it's definitely going to help. But you still want it oversized, so I'm getting to that point where I'm getting close. You don't want to, so I'm going to take some of these hard edges out, and I'm just going to put it back in the vise and get some of these out. Actually, I'm just gonna take it out. It's just a little easier for me to take it out. It's good to have fine tip, like trout tying scissors. I like these from Premax. I got them downtown. A local dealer had them. They're made from Italy. They're pretty sharp. Precision cutting.
Edward said looking good. Richard Driver said nice looking fly gel.
Try not to let the stuff cure up on the scissors. So this is what I have so far. Lips coming up. So I'm gonna let that set. I'm gonna add some silicone to it and then let it set. That's kind of like where I want to kind of just leave it and get it to the appropriate thickness that I want. Get everything done, and then I'm gonna let it cure overnight, and we can take it to the water and start swim testing it. So I'm gonna go ahead and add a little bit more silicone to it. Just cake it on, because we can definitely just spread it around with our finger better. Whoops. Look at that, I didn't even have the vise. The vise was holding the hook, and I didn't even clamp it. Alright. Just get the sides right by the hook eye. There's some pockets right there where some silicone didn't get in. I kind of like to clean those up. Just cake it on and we'll smooth it out. Kind of a slow process, but you want to do it right the first time. I guess you can always repair it. If the fly is all chewed up, you can definitely probably take it to the bench and add a couple layers. Right. Just leave it right there. So I'm gonna smooth out some of this stuff on the lip. Just poke it. Get it around that hook eye. Do my other finger. Let that cure up for a little bit. Now we're going to work a little bit and beef up the backside a little bit. It's a little thin, I can tell. I'm not going for a super cup fly. It's going to be slightly cupped, kind of like this one. Just a slight cup versus, see how much more that is compared to this one. Just creating, this would have a little bit more head shaking. This would have more of like a snake-like wobble, just tighter turns. And you just learn all that by just doing in different shapes and just testing them out, trimming it up differently. That's why you just oversize it on the vise and let it cure up, and then trim it to size and to the action that you want, that you like. And if you get it, don't be afraid to add lead too. Sometimes the very first one that I did, it was swimming good. It started to go to the side a little bit, and it's because I just needed a little beefier hook. I'm using a beefier hook. I used the Arex Trout Predator series, and they're a little thinner wire, so that hook definitely needed some extra lead to it. Stabbing it in there. I'm just gonna go ahead and just beef up this backside a little bit, just add a little layer and then smooth it out. Just keep stabbing. It doesn't need to be like completely even right here, because when you start pressing on it after you're smoothing it out, it kind of just spreads out. We'll just leave it at that for right now. Alright. Just dip your finger in. I'm going to use the side of my finger to get the edge right here and just kind of press. Just tap it in. Just gentle taps. Build up that lip. Probably got to use a little, 2 fingers. It's actually almost done. It's almost to the point where you can almost just leave it and let it set up.
Edward said he's still working on Popovics simpler flies. He will eventually get to one of these.
You're just gonna have to get into it. They're pretty intimidating. You're just gonna have to just dive into it. And then working with silicone, it's actually not that bad. It's pretty friendly because it takes forever to cure up. It tacks up so that it gets moldable, which is good. I was a little worried when I started doing these too. I was like, great, it's gonna take a lot of time. It's not like using epoxy, like 5-minute epoxy, and you're running out of time. You want to try to get the cupping of the fly kind of even as possible. Sometimes the material just fights you. And you kind of have to hold it and every so often and just kind of check it. And then fix up by holding it. Sometimes you ruin certain areas, and now you just gotta like go and fix it again. Don't be afraid to really press on it sometimes. And I use like the shape of my finger to really try to get it to cup. I would just put it up there like as a mold and then really press up against my finger and just let it see how it shapes up. Just kind of like, so now like see by me doing that, you can see it cup a little, and that's where I want it. So it's getting to the point where I need to let it get tacky again. It's a little uneven right there, but you got to keep messing with it kind of in this section. But you can always fix it by adding more silicone and make it a little bit round right there. It's a little thin. That's kind of what you want. You can always add material. And that's one thing a lot of new tires do is like, you can always add materials. If they're too thin. But taking them off is difficult. And a lot of the stuff is sometimes if you get it to curve and it's not curving, you still got to trim it out in the water. And you'll be surprised, like that bad part is going to be cut off. Or is this, no, it's not UV, it's silicone. 30 minute water ready. I would still wait a day. You can probably test it in 30 minutes. I wouldn't advise it. You don't want to go through all this effort to have it somehow mess up.
How would you compare the swimming action to that of a pulse disc?
The pulse disc? I'm not sure what a pulse disc is. Is that what people are starting to use on like Bufords? I think I've seen that before. It's like a little plastic clear thing.
If that's it, Brayden has it. There's some supplies downstairs.
I'm not sure what the action is on the pulse disc, but I'd say it's probably like a game changer action without the shanks. it snakes pretty. It actually swims pretty good. It'll start to really dig into that water. Basically, just like a conventional crankbait. If you get to, you can also probably, if you want to get real fancy. I haven't done it yet, but if you get, I'm just grabbing a hook real quick. Jeez, I can't even get it out. You can add like a rattle that hangs off the back end of this, and just use like some heat shrink. And then once the head shakes start to come in, you can definitely make it sound and act like a crankbait with that little rattle inside of it. I haven't done that yet, but I haven't messed too much with rattles. I'm not sure if, I don't know if it makes a difference or not. I'm sure it does. That's about right. I don't want to touch that anymore right there. I'm just going to leave it like that. Actually, no, I'm touching it still. That's the hard part, is you got to know when to like stop and just let it cure up. That's definitely, because it definitely cures up a little different sometimes. I still feel like I need a little bit more beefiness right here. I kind of like it to be a little bit more beefy. So I'm going to add a little bit more. So that it really doesn't fold down on me. If it looks good to you, then I'd say just stop and then let it cure up and try it out. See how it swims. You'd be surprised. And then trim it up. Make sure the lip isn't hanging past the hook point. And give it a go. See what eats it. Definitely has a lifelike action to it. So I feel like this fly was ahead of its time, being like, I can't even imagine fly fishing and fly tying in the 80s. Just not enough out there at that point, I think, compared to today where you have numerous materials. Just kind of just like chop it in there, get it nice and smooth. I kind of don't mess with the head until it's like all cured up. If it looks all beat up back here, then I'll just add small little dabs of silicone the next day, and then let it cure up. And that's as far as I go on the head right there. I'm just more focused on the lip, because that's going to be, get more focused on beefing up that lip. Sometimes you just gotta look straight on at it. Most of you are probably like, this fly is way too long for me to tie. I'd be 10 deceivers in. Might now. You might as well, yeah. I mean, you could be very well be 10 deceivers in. But the action is pretty hard to beat on this fly, unless you're using a game changer, and those are long tie as well. So you gotta. I like both. The two people that when I first got into tying was Bob and Blaine, so both those flies I tend to do the most. And you can all downsize all these for pretty much tackling, targeting any type of species out there.
David would like to know, is there such a thing as UV silicone like there is with epoxy?
There's UV flex. So there's this stuff that's it dries flexible.
Todd Arnold said you could add a pop lip to a game changer too.
I have done that. It does enhance the action. It's pretty awesome. I think I have a video on Instagram of, I don't know if it's in a post or it might actually, I think it is in a post. If you go to my account, it's a white game changer. It's probably like 4 inches long. I think the lip is a little oversized in the picture, but I ended up trimming it down so that as I was testing it out, I was a little concerned about how this is really long right here, that I didn't want to lose hookups. So this flies, I mean, the lip is going to end up being trimmed probably to right here. So it's beefed up pretty good now. You're going to take another 1/8 inch around the whole thing. Because you don't want that you don't want to lose fish just because. I'm just going to go ahead and try to press this material in a little bit so that there's a good. I'm going to get some silicone right there. It looks like it needs a little more right there. Just this one you need to stab in. It looks like it's a little air pocket. And I'm just gonna kind of wet the comb a little bit and just push it in.
Tim said the original game changer had a lip on it. Blaine changed the design because he wanted a fly to swim like this without the lip on it.
Really?
I bet that'll be in his book coming out.
Yeah. Can't wait for that book. Definitely gonna have some nuggets information that I didn't know. When I started getting into game changers, I was lucky enough to see him tie one in person when he came to Richmond on 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, and it cleared up a lot of questions. And from there on, basically everything's the same, except that you can substitute different materials, shank sizes, or the amount of shanks used to get what you want. It's kind of like this, just an endless, endless. You're just limitless on what you can do with this lip. Like the angle of the lip, you can have the lip way out here, and then it's going to actually dig in the water and dive. I keep it at 90 so that it tracks a little straighter and easier to peel out of the water. And you just got to be careful a little bit with your material. You don't want to crush this. But once in the water, it fills out. It's kind of hollow in here right now. So it keeps the fly light because it's not, the silicone's not going deep. It's just going on top. that's really about it until we let it cure up and start swim testing it. Sometimes you just gotta really look at it from the front, and as it's curing up, kind of manipulate it with your fingers. Or trim it. It looks like it needs to be trimmed a hair on this side. But you can do that after it dries up a little bit, so it's a little easier to work with to really get it even. Sometimes I need to take like a pair of dividers to really make sure that I'm actually even. What I mean by dividers, I like using these, and I'll just get so that I'm cutting straight. It's a little overkill, but you don't want to have a lopsided lip, otherwise it's going to start getting crazy on you. Yeah, probably needs to be trimmed up a little bit right there. I'm going to take the risk and do it.
Alright, well, while he is trimming that up, next week Tim will be back live, and he says he is thinking he's going to be tying soft hackle trout flies. He will know by Tuesday when I get the event post up, so we will know his final decision in just a few days.
So just trimming it up a little bit there to try to get it even as possible. We're gonna, at a certain point, you're just better off stopping and then final trimming it up. But you can start seeing it take shape. It actually kind of touched a little bit of the nose, so I'm gonna try to smooth. Actually, I think this is a. That's what it was. So I just go ahead and smooth this out a little bit. One last time. Kind of set it. And check it out in the morning.
Well, you let it dry and then send me a picture after it's completely dried tomorrow and you've checked it out, and if you've trimmed it anymore, that way you can post it along with this video.
So that's what it looks like from the front. It's a little long, and that's what you want, because if you need to, you can add lead back here to keep it tracking straight when you test it and start trimming it up. And you also want to make sure that the lip is not going past the point of your hook, because when you don't want it could impede some hookups. I haven't used marker on it, but I think so. I think I know some people who have done that, where they let it cure up a little bit, then they marker over it, and then they put another layer over it, and it kind of 3Ds it. So like when it's cured up, they take some of those fish scale like stencils, they mark the head up, and then they put another layer of silicone over that, and it kind of makes it pop up and make it more three-dimensional. So I've seen people do that. I have yet to try to use some of those stencils, but I've known some people who have done it, and they come out awesome.
So for the most part, this is, I mean, it's hollow right here, so you might think you not have enough gap, but it crushes down, like
it's pretty soft, like it just, and you have that. So when you just strip it hard, I mean, I set the hook, and everything just condenses down, and you're really gonna get that hook up. So, is there any additional questions? See, like this one's pretty soft as well, and the hook is farther back. You can use a longer shank hook, and that also helps to really set that hook farther back. You could probably put it on a tube as well. You could probably do it on a tube fly, if you do tube flies, and just have the hook sit way back here, and you won't even have to worry. You could probably have an extra long lip, and won't even have to worry about that. Especially with the trout fly, if anything, I would do it on a tube, and just have that so when they're getting it and they nip towards the back. I mean, that would be a forever fly, tube and silicone. Yeah, that'd be pretty awesome setup right there. They have a tube attachment too, so for the Nor-vise, that's definitely an option. I'm probably gonna, now that I thought about that, I might do that.
I say Keith Beerfield gets on his tube fly tying and tries up one of these.
So, just to like let it cure up, I'm just gonna go around the collar real quick, make sure there's no trap fibers getting stuck with the silicone. Kind of just stab a little bit into it, and then pull it all out. But it's a pretty light fly. I feel like it's just all hook. And that's what the front looks like. So we're gonna let that cure up.
Alright, any last questions? I haven't seen any more come through since it's the silicone and the marker.
And this one's definitely a lot beefier now. So hopefully, I like the eyes. The eyes came out well. I never, where's the camera at? And they're pretty clear through the silicone if you can see it. I was a little concerned that it was gonna cloud over it, but if you actually just press it on and kind of move your finger and kind of shine it, just very lightly, it kind of smooths out the silicone so that it is pretty slick and around that eye, and it just, I mean, you can't even really tell. And those eyes aren't going to go anywhere. So these are sticker eyes. They're nice. I think for now on, I'm going to start using living eyes. But for the most part, I mean, the fly is ready to be just set off to the side, hanging up. I kind of like hang it up like that and let it sit overnight. And in the morning, I'll look at it. If I need to touch it up with some silicone around the collar, I will. Like it does need a little bit, like you can see a little bit right there. I will kind of add a little bit more and just smooth it out and then let it dry some more. But you don't really need to. I mean, that's if you really want like a super, I mean, you're going to get a little hard line. And that's what I kind of did right here. Especially on this one. And so
Dave wants to know if you fish these in fresh water.
yeah, striped bass. You throw, I guess when they're running up the river, with current and everything, it's definitely going to make this fly move out of control. It's going to get them going. For bass, you can downsize it. Actually, a largemouth would probably eat this one. Smallmouth, you definitely need to downsize. Depends on where you're at. I think for smallmouth, I've talked to a couple guys who I mean, they're using hollow flies, and they're like 6 to 8 inches long. And they're getting like up in Ohio, and they're getting some big smallmouth. But in my area, it tends to be like 3 to 4 inches. Seems to be the sweet spot for flies. So I'd downsize it, the pop lip to really. I mean, I've done a 4-inch game changer pop lip, and even though it's a small lip, I mean that small lip creates a lot of action and enhances the already articulated fly. But this is the Popovics hollow pop lip.
It will be on Instagram by Wednesday, and we will include the material list used tonight. And if you have any questions, you can reach Joe on Facebook?
Facebook. I don't
mostly.
But mostly Instagram. That seems to be a little bit easier for me to watch out. I always miss notifications on Facebook.
It's
not so much on Instagram.
And it's at
@JSP_fit_2_fly.
And if you scroll up in the comments, I posted it earlier too. All right, everybody says thank you. Looks good.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for showing up.
We'll see you next week.
Have a good
Again,
night.
Tim will be on time, most likely. What did he say? I've got to scroll back now. Soft hackle trout flies.